Alright boys, so you've asked a million times at this point, Big Ducks, is the Elementalist worth it? Is the Elementalist good? What kind of build should I play on the Elementalist? Should I play such and such build here? Is it good for this kind of build? Well, to answer all of those questions, I'm going to be making this video, and we're going to talk about everything that there is to do with the Elementalist, all of my thoughts, whether or not you should play it, and whether or not that I think that the Ascendancy change was good. I want to remind you that if you are looking for specifically build guides and you're looking for league starters, I have a ton of those available on my channel. You can check out this playlist right here that has all of my league start content. If you're looking for a build guide, check that out. But if you're here wanting to know about the Elementalist, I want to give you this one pre-warning before we go in. These are my opinions. I'm not going to be providing full build guides, I'm not going to be providing a path of buildings, I'm not going to be providing any of that. This is simply my thoughts on some builds that might be good. It's going to be my thoughts on whether or not the Ascendancy is good or bad. And at the end of the day, if you're not looking to push super high-end content, you can literally play whatever you like. It'll be more than fine, I promise you. But let's talk a little bit about the Elementalist now that I've kind of given you a disclaimer on what this video is actually going to be. And remember guys, if you're enjoying my content, make sure that you like this video so that you can see more of it. Also, over 75% of you are still not subscribed to the YouTube channel, so make sure that you hit the subscribe button so that these videos will show right up in your feed. Now without further ado, let's get into the video. Alright boys, so here we are, the Elementalist. This is the one that everyone has been asking me about. Should you go, should you not? First I want to talk about the actual nodes themselves and the changes that they got, because there's actually some pretty significant changes here, but the question is, are they good? So let's start at the bottom and work our way up. Now, the first node that I noticed and the first node that I was interested in was Bastion of Elements. This is the thing that swapped out for that kind of useless node that you just took as like golem build sometimes. What this node is going to do is it's going to give you a tri-elemental Aegis, which is kind of just like a damage shield from lightning, fire, and cold damage. Now, most builds are probably going to have roughly 3,000 damage, like 30 allocated notables. Keep in mind that a notable is one of these big nodes like this. It's not these little ones. You're not getting like a 20,000 damage shield. It's these like medium-sized notable nodes, right? Not keystones, just the medium-sized one. You're gonna get around 30 on most builds. This node is not bad. However, this isn't the first one that I would choose. It is a definite thematic and power upgrade to everything that it was before this. However, the major problem is that most of the time, if you're taking big hits of damage and you're dying from something, it's not elemental damage. We have tons of elemental resist and tons of ways to prevent elemental damage right now. Physical damage is typically the thing that's going to kill you. Chaos damage is typically another thing that's going to kill you. This doesn't really help with any of that. It's good, but it's kind of one of those things, well, I got nothing else to choose, I'll choose this. The next things that I want to talk about are the Golem Nodes. These have not changed significantly. They have had the stats shuffled around a little bit, but the biggest change is to Liege of the Primordial. Summon golems are resummoned 4 seconds after being killed. This is really big for builds that used golems for buffs. Normal golem builds probably won't see too much use out of that. Their golems don't really die anyways because they're scaling the golem stat so high. But for a build that just uses golems as like, I just want to have some golems to help me out with stats, like I want to have a stone golem for some regeneration and a chaos golem for some physical like reduction, this is going to be a great node. Even if you just get this one, right, and you don't go for Elemancer, it's perfectly fine, right? I think that if you're going to go a golem build, you might as well get Elemancer too, just because it's going to give you a bunch more effectiveness, and it's going to give you elemental ailment avoidance, meaning you're just going to be pretty much immune to elemental ailments. I think that this is a big change, and also, controversial opinion here maybe, but I think that this resummoned 4 seconds after being killed should be given to Spectres, honestly. That would make Spectres a lot less annoying to play. Significantly less annoying to play, if we're being real. So the Golem Nodes, perfectly fine. Nothing really has changed too much. They should be more than fine. Golem builds are perfectly fine, no issues with that. The next thing I want to talk about are these nodes on the left. These are the nodes that replaced the Pendulum of Destruction and the Herald node. Rest in peace, Herald Elementalist builds. We hardly knew you haven't been really that great in quite some time, but a Mastermind of Discord, exposures you inflict apply an additional 25% negative to the affected resistance. This is really good, actually. This is pretty much just 25% more damage for any build that applies exposure, and nowadays most builds apply exposure in some way. This is a really good node. I like it. The 1% regeneration of mana seems kind of strange to me, because they made this whole big deal about, we want to remove fluff stats and random stuff from the Ascendancies and make them more streamlined and seem more powerful, and then they just throw in like 1% regeneration of mana if you've inflicted exposure. It's like, okay, I guess. And then the Heart of Destruction, this is what I would have liked to see this node be originally. Solves the issue of Pendulum of Destruction, where you're just like going back and forth between the two things, and it's like, well, I'm on a boss and I've got 100% increased AoE, that's completely useless. Whereas now you just have the AoE while you need it, which is clear, and then you can proc the more elemental damage on bosses, which is when you need the more damage. Very good change. I love this node a lot more than the previous version of it. Excellent node. And now let's get to the part that people are probably going to be upset about. This is going to be the controversial part that some people might not want to agree with me on, but I feel pretty solid about these. I think that out of the 3 Shaper nodes, the Shaper of Flames is the only good one. I think the other 2 are pretty bad. I think that the other 2 are only really going to be used in some very fringe builds or some very niche situations. So I'll talk about Shaper of Flames, why I think that it's good last, but let's talk about the other 2 first. Now, you might be thinking, but they seem so good, you're gonna be able to get like 40% chill and all of this shock effectiveness and everything. It's like, well, you can't just think in such a vacuum. You can't think about just that one node by itself. You have to think about everything and how it all comes together. So let's start with Shaper of Winter. So this makes it so all damage with hits can chill. Keep in mind, hits. It also makes it so that it is always slowing by at least 15%. It gives you 50% more effectiveness of cold ailments. Keep in mind that this says cold ailments. So when I said there might be some weird niche builds, this might be useful in something like some kind of brittle build or something like that, if you can figure that out, because that would make it so that it would have more effectiveness of brittle, which makes them take more crit. Might enable some kind of weird COC build or something like that. I don't know, something weird like that maybe. So that could be pretty good. And then the chills can reduce action speed by up to a maximum of 40. It was already 30, so 10% more action speed loss. I mean, it's good, but this node really doesn't do very much, if I'm being real. You're using an entire 2 ascendancy points to just be able to chill things. And if I'm being honest, I think that if you're going a cold caster build, is there any reason for you to not just choose Occultist over it now? Because Occultist got changed to where Frigid Wake is just 15% more cold damage. I just don't know that you're ever really going to use it for that like purpose, right? I don't think a cold caster is going to get very much out of being an elementalist. Yeah, you can get some damage, but Occultist has so much more utility in it. It's got the 20% negative cold resist and the reduced life regeneration. It's got 15% more cold damage, immunity to chill, immunity to freeze, the random freezing of bosses nearby, reduced damage that chilled enemies do, and then it also has access to malediction. That's double curse and effectiveness of curses and less damage taken and more damage done. It's got stun immunity and Vile Bastion. You could get chaos resistance from this node if you wanted to. There's just so much more that you can get out of Occultist for a cold build than I feel would ever be useful for Elementalists. So Shaper of Winter, I don't know, man. You can get that effect by running Skitterbots if you really, really want to chill without having to spend the points here, right? And I mean, kind of the same thing goes for Shaper of Storms. You can get this effect mostly from just running Skitterbots. Skitterbots literally does both of these nodes. Most of the effectiveness of these nodes is literally given to you by Skitterbots. Well, let's talk about Shaper of Storms. So most lightning damage builds right now are one of 2 things. Most lightning damage builds are either going to be Archmage or they're going to be some kind of mine, most of the time. There's not really any in between. There's not really too many good self-cast lightning builds. That's really the only thing that we've got at the moment. You can play, like, there are like arc builds and there are like just self-cast, you know, like weird eclectic smaller builds that do work with a ton of gear. But if we're talking about just like the typical meta builds that work with lower gear, it's pretty much Archmage and Mine skills is pretty much all that you've got right now. So what does this node really do for that? Most lightning abilities that are hitting quite hard. So if you're an Archmage build, you're going to be hitting really, really hard, meaning that you're probably going to be shocking. You don't have much of an issue with shocking. I mean, you could probably use this for something like, if you just wanted to add in some effectiveness of like a fire build that you were running and you wanted to get some shock. But I mean, if you're running a fire build, in my mind, you're probably going to be running an ignite build of some kind. I don't think that you're going to be going a pure fire damage elementalist. That's a fire on hit damage. There's not too many of those builds right now, for being real. So you would just go Shaper of Flames. I would go the Golem Nodes, and then as your last node, are you really going to choose Shaper of Storms? Like, are you going to try to shock things when you could just have 25% more damage here for free? I just don't know that it's worth it, right? Like, I don't know. I can't see too good of a use for this besides in some weird, small, like niche builds, right? So let's talk about actually using Shaper of Flames now. So with an Ignite build, I think that this is actually quite good. The first 2 lines are completely useless. Most Ignite builds nowadays are going to be using Burning Arrow or Fireball. Those are the two typical ones that you would use. This is literally just 25% more damage. That's it. That's all that this is, right? So if you're playing like a Fireball Ignite Elementalist, you could probably just go these 3 nodes right here, and then this first Liege of the Primordial node, or you could even drop Heart of Destruction and go for Elemancer and just stack a bunch of golems, stack a bunch of Ignite damage, go like that. That would probably be fine. You could do the same exact thing as like a Burning Arrow build. I actually ran a Burning Arrow build a couple leagues back. I think it was in Metamorph. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was in Metamorph. I ran like a Zoph's Nurture Burning Arrow build and used just golems to help scale some defenses. And now that you've got like the summon golems to just resummon, that was the only problem that build ever really had, was random bosses sometimes would just kill the golems and it was a pain to resummon them. So that kind of fixes that problem. If you're wanting to play an Elementalist, I feel like right now your choices are playing an Ignite build like Fireball or Burning Arrow, or playing just a Golem build, like say Fire Golem build might be pretty good for this, because you could take Mastermind of Discord and apply some exposure so that their fire damage would do more. So you just take like these 2 nodes, this node, and then maybe Bastion of Elements, or you could take one of these and do like a support kind of thing. Like you could do something that would just make it so that all of your damage would chill or all of your damage would shock. That might be a use for Shaper of Storms, because Heart of Destruction isn't really going to do anything if you're a Golem build. It's not going to increase the damage of the golems themselves. It's just going to give you more damage, right? So that might be something you can do. And then the last thing would be builds that survive off of doing golem buffs. So I remember back before there was like a Void Forge build that Mathil had played a couple of times that used golems for their buffs. You could play any kind of just elemental damage build that used golems for their buffs. Keep in mind, you can get like life regeneration, a ton of it. You can get physical DR, you can get crit, cast speed, damage, attack speed. You can get all kinds of cool stuff from golems. So the golem buff build actually does work pretty well now, because you don't have to worry about them dying. They'll just respawn after a couple of seconds. My overall thoughts, Elementalist and the rework, a huge step in the right direction. However, in the current state of the game, and with the skill gem changes, the 40 massive changes that we got being really lackluster and not actually being too big of a change, I think with where we currently are in the game, Elementalist might not be the best Ascendancy. However, I think that there is some potential here. I think that the Elementalist has a couple doors that have been opened for it towards some pretty interesting builds, like Golem buff-based builds. Some Ignite builds will probably move back towards Elementalist now, which will be really cool. And then we're probably going to get some of those like weird niche builds that people make that do really cool interactions with these Shaper nodes down here. So I think Elementalist has got some more stuff going for it. That is a huge move in the right direction, because literally Elementalist before was relegated to being like Stone Golems, is essentially what this entire Ascendancy was doing. And sometimes you get like Tri-Elemental Blade Vortex Herald builds or something like that, but Elementalist has been really in a rough spot for a long time, and this is a huge move in the right direction. Would I suggest playing this as your league starter? Depending on what you want to do. I mean, if you're just trying to make a build that's going to get you to like yellow maps and then you're not worried about it, you're going to swap over to something more expensive afterwards, sure. I mean, you could do that, absolutely. It would be perfectly fine. Is this a build or an Ascendancy that I think is going to take you to like the 10 boss Maven fight kind of stuff and be able to like absolutely demolish it? I don't know if the Elementalist is going to be able to enable that right now. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think about the Elementalist down in the comments. If you have a differing opinion to me, I'd like to hear it. These are my thoughts. I'd be very curious to see some people give some good ideas on what could be done with the Elementalist, because I think that is one of the most powerful things about Path of Exile in general, is the fact that people can find out and figure out how to do all kinds of crazy stuff. And although I might not see something possible in what has been given here, there's probably somebody out there that's going to make a ridiculous build, and then once we find that, maybe I can play an Elementalist build and have something really fun to do. So that's pretty much it for my thoughts on it. All right, boys, so that's just my opinion on the Elementalist. Like I said, TLDR, moving in a good direction. I don't think the current climate and the current meta and the current gems that we have available really support the Elementalist properly right now. If you're not looking to push like super duper high-end content, it's going to be perfectly fine. There's no issue. The Elementalist will be great. Play it. Who cares, right? You're meant to have fun in this game. Path of Exile is a game where you're just meant to have fun. Don't let other people tell you, no, you're not allowed to play that because it's not fun and it's not allowed. You know, who cares, right? My goal is to give you guys thoughts on what I think is good. I don't think the Elementalist is in a great spot right now, except for Golem builds and Burning Ignite type builds. So remember, guys, if you enjoy my content, make sure that you like this video so you can see more of it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content similar to this, and stay safe out there in raid class. And I'll see you guys in 3.13 Echoes of the Atlas.